This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 318 for Wednesday, May 15th, 2019. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me tonight, Mr. Lou Page of Zombies Ate My Podcast, who you can find at Busy Zombie Lord on all the social media that matters. Good evening, Lou.
Hey, thanks for having me.
This is my calm, zen intro to what is otherwise going to be a very ranty episode, I feel.
I'm going to see if I can calm you down. I'm going to try and keep you calm. Because
Challenge accepted.
I understand where you might be upset, but I'm going to tell you right now, everything you're upset about, I've kind of seen coming a mile down Broadway.
Okay. So we are not going to pussyfoot around. There's a section in our show notes to pull back the curtain that says small talk. Talk that is small, no weather, and occasional geography. And my note here is simply no small talk, too angry. So we're going to skip it, and we're going to talk about Game of Thrones. So unless you have been under a rock for 8 years, Game of Thrones Season 8 is happening right now. Episode 5, The Bells, was just released this past Sunday to mixed reviews. I am part of the mixed, but we cannot talk about this without spoiling it. So if you have not seen that episode, stop now. We will be here when you get back. It's a recording. It's the wonderful thing about stuff on demand. And you need to see this before you talk to us or email us or listen to us or whatever it is that you're going to do with us, because I can't even think straight. Episode 5, The Bells. To summarize, Varys wants Jon to take the Iron Throne, but Jon refuses to betray Daenerys. After Tyrion informs her, Daenerys, of Varys' plot, Daenerys burns Varys with her dragon. End Varys. Daenerys plans to incinerate King's Landing, but Tyrion conspires with Jaime to surrender the city if Jaime can convince Cersei to abdicate the throne and ring the bells, which will generate an all-around retreat. That's the signal, hence the name of the episode. Jaime, and separately Arya and Sandor Clegane, infiltrate King's Landing. Daenerys has Drogon destroy the Scorpions, the Iron Fleet, and the Golden Company, allowing her army to enter. And yes, it happens about that fast. The Lannister forces are overwhelmed and surrender. But enraged, Daenerys attacks the city on Drogon, indiscriminately burning soldiers and civilians alike. The allied army follows her lead, slaughtering all in their path, horrifying Tyrion and Jon. Tyrion at this point has eyes of eagles because he's so far removed from the battle. I can't imagine he sees anything that's going on. Sorry, the snark is coming out already. After entering the Red Keep, Jaime kills Euron Greyjoy, but is mortally wounded in the battle. Clegane convinces Arya to abandon killing Cersei and engages the Mountain, who then kills Qyburn, but then Clegane and the Mountain fight fiercely until they both die, falling over the side of the Red Keep into the flames below. Cersei and Jaime reunite and flee, and then are buried in a tunnel as it collapses on top of them. Jon calls for a retreat as civilians flee King's Landing that is disintegrating from fire, and Arya, amid the destruction, barely escapes the city alive. That's a lot. I mean, these summaries have gone from being like one paragraph to like 6. As I do this at the beginning of each review of the Game of Thrones episodes. I remember when I first started this 8 years ago, and they were a lot more concise because there'd be some poignant moments, but there'd be an awful lot more character building and stuff in between. And I feel like now that we're at the end, the episodes seem to be happening fast and furious. With like, this happens, then this happens, and this happens, and this happens, because they have so much to wrap up and they have so little time to do it in.
The other issue that's been happening with this season, and it's not being talked about as much. Um, it stretched the budget as thin as it could go.
Yeah.
There's a reason why that night battle with the dead takes place at night. It's because it was way cheaper for them to do the special effects that way, where you couldn't actually see what was going on.
Yeah. And I would argue, as I did mention on that episode on the show, that it was also effective. Like it made sense. Like it wasn't just
Yeah.
we're skimping out on, or we've run out of budget, we have to do this cheaply. It's no. Yes, this is going to save us money and make this a lot easier to do, but it's going to amp the fear. It's going to
Yeah.
fulfill the long night, which is the name of the episode. What's the phrase? The night is dark and full of terrors. Right.
Yeah.
Like that prophecy. Like it fulfills that prophecy. It makes sense. And I think that's where I'm drawing the line in my thoughts on the last two episodes. This one in particular.
My favorite outrage from like 2 weeks ago was that John waves to the wolf and sends the wolf back north of the wall, and people are like,
Oh, from last week, yeah.
Why? Yeah, why didn't he pet the wolf and send it say goodbye? And did you hear what HBO's response was?
Well, yeah, we don't have the budget for that. Is essentially
we
yeah.
don't have the budget.
No,
for that.
but the problem there is that there are other things that they've spent CG budget on that
are a waste of time.
That were a waste of time or repetitive, and they could have easily reallocated. And when you're watching that scene and it happens, the first thing that comes to mind is they must not have been able to do that shot physically. Like they could not put John and a CG wolf together for this goodbye scene because it would cost too much. And that's the first thing that you think of, because nothing in the story can satisfy you otherwise. You have no good reason. You have never, ever been given a reason why John would shrug off saying goodbye to this lifelong companion.
Right.
Like, because it doesn't make sense. So the first thing you think of is like, oh, they must have ran out of CG budget. And that is what's happening in this episode or this season, is there's these little moments that are pulling you out of Westeros and putting you on your couch watching an HBO television show. And it sucks. Like they're pulling back the curtain and shooting themselves in the foot more often than not. I have been having a really difficult time articulating how I feel about the last two episodes. And it's hard because we've been just so invested in the last 8 years. But for me, kind of the overall thoughts for episode 5 is nothing is making sense. I understand that there's bullet points and that, yes, the facts and the history and the things have been mentioned throughout the series, but what I'm seeing is not convincing. And I think it stems from this, the lack of budget, whether that's shorter seasons, forget CG stuff, but like whether it's, lack of time writing, whether it's lack of episodes, like instead of 10, we've got the last two seasons have been like 7 episodes and 6. Whereas I really feel like there could have been 10, and there could have been...
I feel like there was a whole bunch last season that could have been trimmed up, and some of this stuff could have been done last season.
Yeah. And I think part of it too, like had some of this stuff been done last season, then, like, for example, imagine that the end of last season was the long night.
Yeah, or them lining up and the battle beginning, and then they cut to next season. We'll finish this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you don't know who's going to be alive or dead or all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like because they could have spent an entire season, with dealing with like King's Landing, Daenerys, and trying to convince Westeros to follow Daenerys. All the politics of the Game of Thrones could have been this whole season, not the last episode and a half, right? And I feel like that's where they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot. But the thing that I find so troubling is that nearly all the characters that you've been following for like the last 8 seasons are making ridiculous decisions. They're things that just don't make sense given the character that they have established. I think the best example, I mean, to get the elephant out of the room, is Daenerys. They've
Oh, see, she's the one character I don't have a problem with. I've known that this was coming, even reading the books, that she was going to do what she did.
Even if that's the case, they did a poor job of having it
Showing
having it happen so quickly, where she burns King's Landing and kills innocent people on purpose by choice. She's not gone mad. She's just mad. There's a difference, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about like the Mad King, about losing his mind and killing people and trying to take down. He was supposed to light up all of King's Landing and burn it down with wildfire, and Jaime stopped him. That's how Jaime became the Kingslayer, is that he stopped the Mad King from killing everybody, because Jaime knew that there was innocent people at stake, and that just wasn't right. And Daenerys is doing the same thing, but for whatever reason, because of how long ago the Mad King happened, because of all the different reasons, I don't remember exactly what they are, but there was enough of a time frame as they told that story that you started to believe it. You also kind of got the idea that the Targaryen, like, he could have actually been mad, as in Mad Hatter, right? Like, he could have been not right in the head. And even though he was on the throne, he had lost it, and there was nothing anybody could do, because in this society, the king is the king, and that's it. Whereas with Daenerys, they don't show her spiral into madness. She has a bunch of terrible stuff happen to her, and then they use that as the emotional switch that says, all right, well, screw everybody. The problem is that all this happens in our perception, 2 episodes, but say like, a month or something in the character's life. But all of the years that have been building this character up, it's not like bad shit has never happened to her before. She lost a baby. She had her husband die. He was brought back to life, but he was a zombie, or not a zombie, but he was brainless with Drogo. She's had slaves and people murdered. She's had like loves. She's had betrayal. She's had all these different things happen to her, and it builds her up as a character. And then all of it just is worth nothing because of the decisions that they made in the last 2 episodes.
Well, I disagree with you to an extent. I feel like this whole season, we've seen a little bit of a different version of Daenerys, because right off the bat, when she's sitting in they haven't had the long night, and she's sitting in the throne room, and they're all drinking and talking and stuff, and people say stuff, and she's like, but I'm the queen. And she did that sort of thing before, like when she was in Marine, but she showed people kindness. And it since she's landed in the 7 Kingdoms, her attitude has been like, no, now I just want what's mine. No, I just want what's mine. I'm going to take it. And I think now that she's realized that maybe she made this whole, my interpretation of what I've seen is, now that she's made this whole thing, gone all this way, and done everything that she's done, and she's realized that she's not going to get what she wants, or she's not going to be on the throne for long. And now, instead of behaving like an adult, she's just like, screw it, I'm throwing the board. And I think that's her whole reaction with this episode. And it's something I've seen coming since probably last season. I've viewed this story since the beginning, in both the books and in the show, as there's only 2 ways her story ends. Her story either ends with her and Jon sharing the throne, or it ends with her dying. And I've thought that since probably book 4. And so when she did what she did in the show, I was like, oh yeah, yep. They're going to make her be the downfall.
So for me, I'm with you on that. I thought that the way that it was going to end was with Jon and Daenerys on the throne. And I was hoping that Jon's little secret was going to be their little secret.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily thinking it was going to be a happy ending, especially after some of the ways that they showed Jon and Daenerys interacting. Like he obviously, I mean, what I'm getting from their interactions is the fact that Jon is weirded out by the fact that she's his aunt. Like that's
Yes.
what I'm getting. They're not voicing that. I wish they would.
No,
Uh,
they're spending too much time on the fighting and not enough time on the story.
100% agree. Like I can't tell you how many bloody times Daenerys on that dragon went back and forth killing women, children, and retreating soldiers over and over and over again. I only needed to see it twice, maybe three times. And that
Yeah.
was it. That's all I
Yeah,
needed.
you needed to see her breathe fire on the dragon, see Jon have the chaos. Then when Arya's trying to escape with that wife,
Yep.
that woman and her child,
Yep.
watch them get toasted, and then see a third blast that almost takes out Arya. And that's all you needed to see.
Exactly.
You knew what was going on, and you just needed to watch. You could show Daenerys bringing down the tower, the Red Keep. That's fine. That makes sense. But they spent so much time on burning down the city. It was like, okay, I get it. Can we move on now?
Yep.
It was like 20 minutes of the episode was her just burning down the city.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and how many times did Arya quote unquote almost die? 6?
7.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be very clear. I'm not slamming any of the acting in the show because any actor that was put in this position and told this is what's happening and this is what you have to do and try to portray that believably, they all did well. Like Arya, she's on an emotional roller coaster and you get that. Like you absolutely receive that. I'm not saying that that isn't believable, but I'm saying that she should not have been on that roller coaster in the first place, right? But
Right.
but Arya, like all that special effects, like with Arya and all the special effects with Daenerys, like there's your budget for Ghost, for 15 minutes or 15 seconds of
Yep.
of Jon saying goodbye to Ghost, like just anyway. Not to mention that we've all seen Lord of the Rings. We all know there's trickery that you can do with a reeled animal and just have it be closer to camera. Like I feel like there's something they could have done without having it be like a CG wolf, that cost
I agree.
a lot of
I
money.
agree.
Just
I've thought
enough,
that since the beginning.
just enough to have some sort of interaction. But anyway, it's one of these little small things that people are nitpicking about. But in this episode, like there was just so much of that back and forth, and it undermined what they wanted you to feel. You were supposed to feel that Daenerys has somehow snapped. And while I think that everybody's a fantastic actor, I don't want to slam Emilia Clarke. She can't do angry.
No, she can't.
Nothing about what she does made me feel that she was furious. I believe that she was sad. I believed the emotion when Missandei died. Like that was real. But
Yeah.
showing me Daenerys with makeup to make her look tired and the fact that we know that she hasn't eaten in a couple of days does not a mad queen make, right?
Right.
And when there's this long shot when she's on the back of Drogon and the bells are going and it's decision time. It's I see the Red Keep. Everything is done. They've retreated. They've surrendered, but there's just Cersei left. The reason I'm here is in that tower. And she decides to burn women and children instead. And it just doesn't add up. Now, if I was to say, okay, we all have opinions about how we could do this better. So sure, why don't I throw mine out there? What if Daenerys had decided to attack the Red Keep? Not purposely kill women and children in the streets, but take down the Red Keep, bring it down on Cersei's head, but in the process of this giant castle collapsing, innocent people died.
Unfortunately, the story they're trying to tell here is they're quoting Nietzsche. He who fights monsters must be careful not to become one themselves.
Mm.
And that's been her entire journey. At every turn, I've been like, yup, yup, she's taking out these monsters. She's taking out these monsters. And even when she was in Marine, they were talking about her and how she wasn't much better than those that were leading Marine, even though she thought she was.
Right.
And now she's come to the Seven Kingdoms, and there's a conversation that she has with John, and I wish it was longer.
Right.
It's in this. It's either in last episode or this episode. I can't remember what it is, but they have a conversation, and he says something about being in charge, and basically she says, "It doesn't matter if I'm on the throne or something like that." But like, in other words, I don't need them to respect me. I need them to fear me. And when she said that, and then I saw this episode, I was like, yeah. So she's not going to be any better than anybody else that's sat on the throne.
There was a conversation that she and John had in front of the fire this episode, and it was about love and fear.
Yeah.
And so she kisses him, and he pushes her away again. And this is like the second or third time they've shown us this season. So it's just like, instead of talking, they just do this kiss push away thing, but it doesn't.
And it's stupid.
It's dumb, because John doesn't do or say anything of value. It is infuriating that we're supposed to be. I mean, if Daenerys is supposed to be the bad guy now, or fall from grace, we need somebody to root for. I'm not rooting for John because he hasn't earned anything. He hasn't done anything because he refuses to. I mean, he'll stop a soldier from raping somebody in the street, which, by the way, the whole city is coming down on top of you, and you decide to go after the woman. Like, there's some really poor.
And not only that, but the city is falling around him, and that guy was stopping to take the time to assault the woman. I'm like,
yeah,
there was fire in the street 30 seconds ago.
Exactly. Like, everybody should be running for their lives. I mean, sure, if he was if he was slicing and killing people and John was stopping him, sure, it makes sense. Like, because everybody, like all of Daenerys' forces, all the non-King's Landing soldiers followed Grey Worm's lead and started to kill soldiers that were running away, but also were killing everybody else. And again, like, I don't understand, because you can very clearly see that is a person in rags or regular clothing that is cowering and running for their lives. All the soldiers are in armor and either are or were armed at some point. It's and bright red. So it's kind of easy to see who is the soldiers that you should be killing. And in a way, while I don't agree with the decision to kill the soldiers that have surrendered, I sort of get it. Like, I sort of would understand that, like, for Daenerys to have that extra push of the Mad Queen, to have that order of, like, yes, the army has surrendered, the Lannisters have surrendered, but we're still going to burn the Lannisters to the ground. The only Lannister left is going to be Tyrion. That's it. I would understand that. Because if Daenerys was like, nope, you let the women and children leave, but all the Lannister soldiers, they made their bed, they're done. It's harsh. It wouldn't be entirely out of character for Daenerys, and I would be able to kind of settle with it better. But, like, these decisions, these extreme decisions, have not been earned. To go back to what you said about Marine and like the different cities that she took, like Karth and some of the other cities on the other side of the sea, when she came out of that as a leader, while she wasn't unscathed, you felt that she had earned it.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that she has earned anything in Westeros. Right? No. Like, she's not earned the people that follow. They're following her out of fear. But she didn't have to make that decision when she landed. And I don't know why she did. Because she did not rule out of fear in Karth and Marine. And look what it got her. It got her a huge following, and her people love her. But it's like she switches gears when she gets to Westeros, and it doesn't make any sense. And she doesn't take the time to say, okay, I see that they don't love me, but they follow you and they respect you, John. You know, because the people of Westeros, and if you break it down to the real basics, the people of Westeros don't want to follow a foreigner. They want to follow one of their own, somebody that they know, someone that grew up there, knows the land, knows the people, knows the ways of the world, or knows the ways of the people. But
Right.
instead of asking John or talking to John and trying to figure out how why they love him and teaming up with them or doing anything like that, it's just this black and white card, and I don't understand why it's like, no, they have to love me or get out. And it's like, but you've not given them any reason to. They've never even heard of you until you arrived. Like, dragons
Right.
didn't exist until last season when a couple of people saw them. Like it's like it goes right back to what we said earlier about they are spooning so much into so little. The last two seasons, they've just kind of jammed everything together, and there's Daenerys hasn't had any. She hasn't learned anything from her losses.
No. You've been made to think that she might be, but then when she gets to Westeros, it's like, oh no, she didn't learn anything on her journey.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that, and they have an opportunity to, to speak about like this show, media in general, and where we are in the planet, 2019. There was a real opportunity here to have, yes, a flawed, but a powerful female protagonist win. And maybe not a perfect win, but realize faults, realize, weaknesses, and build upon themselves and become a better person. Make serious mistakes. Like, I felt a bit of the regret when she had to tell Sam that she had burned his father and his brother alive. Like there was a moment of like,
There's a
crap.
moment of crap, and then when he looks at her, she kind of snaps out of it and is like, "Well, I did what I had to do."
Yeah, but there was a moment after he leaves with when she looks at Jorah, and they have this. There's a silent moment of like, oh, jeez, like that. Maybe I have to rethink my ways. And I mean, and I'm glad I brought up Jorah, because here's something else that um that I think really paints this throne the something that they've missed. So Jorah is supposed to have been her right hand and her faithful, subject and protector right up until the very end. She loves and respects his opinions, and then it's like he doesn't exist in this episode. Like, what would Jorah think?
Well,
Not
I wonder if that might be the point, that without him to be her guiding force, she's not really any better than everybody else.
right, but and if that's the case, if that's what the writers want, then again,
They didn't.
poor
They did. They
execution.
did. Yeah, poor
Yeah.
execution.
So I don't want to dwell on Daenerys for the whole episode, but I was extraordinarily disappointed. I thought there was a number of other ways, especially because of how slow the pacing was with the burning of the city and how long that shot was of that look on Daenerys' face of that sadness of what she's going to do next. And they had this tennis match between Daenerys on her dragon and Cersei looking out her window, and you just thought, oh, they're connecting the two. Daenerys is now going to fly straight for the keep and burn it to the ground, and then she does nothing of the sort, or she
Yeah,
takes her
that
bloody
was
time.
what bothered me, is I wanted to see her just burn down the castle. I was like, that's fine. Go, let her go kill
Mm-hmm.
Cersei. Let it be over.
Yeah,
And it was like, nope, we're gonna do everything but.
yeah, exactly. And
Um, I mean, I'll be honest. I was willing to forgive the dragon burning down all those crossbows and everything, because when it got revealed the last episode and she lost the second dragon, those boats came out of nowhere and out from behind a bunch of rocks, and she had no idea they were there. So boom, boom, boom. Okay, they got you by surprise. You need to fall back and regroup and get. Uh, there was too much going on that they were surprised by. This battle, I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that she seems to come in behind those boats and take them out. And then when she hits the castle from the side. They're not pointing the bows at. You know what I mean? Whereas the last time when she went to fight, there was too many boats and they all seemed to be pointing in different directions. And I was like, okay. And then when she took out the front wall, I was like, okay, this makes sense. I'm willing to forgive that action. I don't think it's totally poor writing, but it could have really been explained by some simple battle strategy dialogue 5 minutes before the battle began.
yeah, I I get the whole learn from mistakes. Come in. She uses the sun. She flies in from the
Yeah,
sun, and they can't see her in the sun. Uh,
yeah.
I thought they had such a long shot of all these boats of the Iron Fleet in the bay that I thought, even though I was like, okay, I don't know how she would do it because I don't know how she would do it on Drogon's back, but I expected to see Drogon swimming underneath the boats, right? Like they have this
Yeah.
thing you're waiting for the swoop in the air, of Drogon to see the shadow and the roar, but instead you just see the silhouette under the boats. Like that's kind of what I was expecting. But then of course at the same time I was like, but I don't know, like that doesn't work for Daenerys actually on his back, right? Like I don't see that
Right.
physically working. But uh, I can sort of see her coming in and getting a couple of shots in on the Iron Fleet. Yeah, but to go completely unscathed, to best all of the scorpions,
It was too much.
it was way
It was
too
too
much.
much.
And the scorpions have gone from we can hit a dragon from a mile away with these things that we've had for 10 minutes and bring it down 3 square shots, including one through the throat. But Drogon, the biggest of all the dragons, they had the one sweep where he came into the sun. Sure, I get it. He came in the sun, you can't see him. Every last one of them throughout the entire show, whether it was on a wall or whether it was on the boats, all missed. No one came even close. There wasn't even there was no close call. There was no injury. Nothing. And
Right.
there was no danger. There was no threat. So you never root for Daenerys because she's I mean, Endgame spoiler. She's kind of Captain Marveling,
Yes.
the whole place, and you're just kind of like, but anyway, a lot of the logic was it fell short for me, and
Right.
I feel I did like the gate explosion. Like that to me was a cool kind of like we've been waiting for this attack for 8 seasons. Like I kind of liked that.
Right.
Golden Company was a lot smaller than I thought it would be.
It was smaller than I thought it was going to be. And didn't Daenerys try to hire them at one point a couple seasons ago? And they were kind of like jerks to her and like, you don't have enough money.
I don't remember that. That could be the case.
I think it was like way back in like seasons 2 or 3 when she was hiring mercenaries to help her get
maybe.
across. I think the Golden Company was somebody she tried to hire and they turned her down.
Maybe.
And so I was like, okay, I'm willing to forgive that small thing.
Yeah.
The thing that was the most upsetting to me was Jaime's downfall.
Yep.
I wanted to see him get to Cersei and try to explain to her that like if you want to live, you've got to go with me. And to her to lose her temper over everything that was happening and him being forced to be the Kingslayer again and kill her.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to see happen. To be him realize there is nothing redeemable about you and kill her.
Yep.
And he didn't need to live. He could have still died in the falling tower.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to see him lose his cool and realize what a flawed character she is.
Yeah,
and he doesn't.
No. Cersei and Jaime's death were two of the most disappointing deaths in this series, let alone this season. Cersei is and has earned the right to be a hated character, like almost more than Joffrey. Like she is, especially after Missandei last week. Woof! Like she is. I mean, I was talking to my dad about it, and he was just like, "Man, she's a bitch." I was like, "Yeah, you're right, Dad. Like that is everybody loathes her, but in a way that you love to loathe the bad guy. Because she is just evil.
Yeah,
and she dies whimpering in the arms of the man she loves. That's not the death that's going to satisfy millions of Game of Thrones viewers.
No.
What needed to happen was one of two things, in my opinion. As you said, Jaime needed to be the one to kill her. I was hoping that was why Jaime was leaving Winterfell in the first place. Was he was being hurtful to Brienne so that he could escape. If he's like, if I hurt her feelings, if I break her heart, then I will have no choice but to keep on going. If I'm not harsh with her, she's going to convince me to stop and stay. But I am the one person who can get close enough to Cersei to maybe put a stop to this before thousands of people die.
Right.
And then for Cersei's death, to have her think that she's in the arms of Jaime and that he's going to rescue her, or for them to have that embrace, or for her to try and manipulate him one last time to try to get him to side with her or whatever in her last desperate move.
Right.
For him to shiv her at that moment, like for him to stick a knife through her heart, and for her to realize that her death is coming from the one person on this planet that she thought she could love and that loved her back is also the person killing her, would be like, that horror on her face would be so satisfying as a viewer. The only other thing that I can think of that would be a satisfying death for Cersei would be Arya. After all of this effort to protect King's Landing and keep the throne and all this kind of stuff, to have this teeny tiny little Stark come in there and be like, I was there when my dad was beheaded at your order through Joffrey, and this is payback.
Right.
To have that happen and have it happen in a way that would surprise even Cersei would be fantastic. And I mean, it goes with what Clegane was trying to do, right? I mean, so because you're like, well, how does Arya get close to Cersei with the mountain still being around? And that is where Clegane was going to come in to engage in a fight with the mountain and to give a distraction so that Arya could get to Cersei. That was what I was anticipating. And even though I thought about it first, I would not have been upset if that's how it went down. I was just like, sure. I mean, Arya got to kill the Night King. Why not have her kill Cersei too? Sure. Jaime was my number one thought, though. But to have them buried underneath the castle in a show that has given you gruesome, satisfying deaths to evil, bloody people, to basically have the curtain come down in a pile of rubble, you don't see anything.
I actually wonder if next episode will begin with them being dragged out of the rubble.
Alive?
Alive.
I will be so fucking angry if that's what happens. Dude, that will rival Arrow and The Flash and like DC television writing in terms of like bad decisions and unable to, like, villains that just won't die, and there is no real danger, so who cares how this 45-minute episode ends because no one ever dies, and it's like the 5th time that Thrawn is back or some other stupid shit. Like, if they're dead, just let them be dead. It sucked. It was a horrible disappointment, but if they come back, I'm gonna be swearing more next week. Like, it just
I will tell you right now, my theory next week is that Daenerys is going to take the throne, and with her first order of business is to put Jon and Tyrion on a pike and attempt to burn them with the dragon. That's what I see coming next week. She's going to call them both traitors because they are not going to disagree with what she did to the city, and she's going to want to kill them. And then Arya's going to kill her, and the dragon's going to breathe fire on Jon, and Jon, like Daenerys before him, is not going to burn. And that's going to be it.
I forgot about that because Jon doesn't know that about himself yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's going to happen next week.
Interesting.
I don't know how it's going to unfold, but I think that that's what's going to happen. Is Jon's going to get torched by the dragon and walk away.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
And I also think that the city is going to get surrounded by all the people that Varys sent letters to before he died.
Well, also, one of his little birds was in the city, and that we never saw her die. They showed her escaping death narrowly. We never see her again. Of all the characters that they should have shown escaping the city, there should have been that other little girl. Like, instead of Arya riding off into the dust with the white horse that shows up at a bloody nowhere, they should have also had the shot of this little kid that had one of those scrolls from Varys escaping. I agree that Arya is going to be the one to go after Daenerys just because of so
They
much
spent so
time.
much time showing the chaos
Yeah,
that I was like, "Yep, that they're lining this up because they when Arya kills her
yeah,
in the next episode, that's what they want. They want it to mean something."
yeah. And man, they got to do something because like Arya had what one name left on her list, and that was Cersei.
Yeah,
And it took it took Clegane all of a conversation to change her mind. Uh, I really kind of felt that the conversation with Clegane and Arya wasn't needed. You got the idea of the change in Arya from her fear through trying to escape King's Landing.
yeah.
I
I felt like it would have been a better twist to have Arya trying to convince him not to go after
yes,
Clegane,
yeah,
and then him being like, "No, it's why I came here, and what else is left for me?
mm-hmm,
Don't be like me."
yeah,
And tell it and her being like, "Fine, I have to leave you," and leaving him. I felt like that was a much better way they could have done it. It just feels like everything has been rushed.
oh, absolutely. I mean, half the stuff that's happening is it feels like it's happening because the script says so, not because that's how we would envision the characters to act.
Right.
And that's the problem with bad writing is that if if you're not thinking about how the character would do it and following that path, then your audience is going to be like, "Wait, what?" Like none of this really makes any sense. It doesn't add up with what we know. With the exception, and I can give a positive, note here, Grey Worm. So after Daenerys makes the decision to just start attacking the surrendered soldiers and killing innocents in the process because you can't aim dragonfire precisely, Grey Worm loses his shit and decides to start attacking and leading an attack on the soldiers on the ground. And that to me makes sense. Like, here's a guy that
Yeah.
has grown up with nothing, has nothing but violence. Finally, through all of the turmoil in following Daenerys, finally found love in Missandei, and that was taken from him by Cersei and the Lannisters and her army. I get it. I can even understand Grey Worm taking that action against everybody's orders, right? Uh, not I don't know if he would necessarily disobey Daenerys. It's hard to say, but she's not there to obey or disobey. She's not giving any orders. She's just doing stuff. But that to me makes sense. What I would have rather seen in that execution of for Jon is instead of Jon finding random dude attacking attacking innocent people in the city, the confrontation should have been with Jon and Grey Worm, right? Because
Yes.
here is Jon realizing that Daenerys is no longer the queen that he thought she was, and then who better because he can't confront her? She's on the back of a dragon, but who better for Jon to confront than her right hand man, and to try to convince him, who is grief stricken, furious, seeing his queen burn these assholes to the ground, and is going to join her in doing so, to have Jon get between him and an innocent person or a soldier that has surrendered, right? For Jon to
Right.
say like, "I've been fighting beside you for, I guess, months. I don't know sure how much time has transpired, but like we've been in the thick of this together a number of times, and including like the long night at Winterfell. But I'm telling you, I'm putting my body between your spear and this dude. Stop it." And like it would
Right.
have been the first time that Jon had done anything. But again, we don't get that. We get Jon doing something, but two characters that are inconsequential with no one around to see it. And
Yep.
it's the same thing same problem I had with Arya killing the Night King. Important, incredible that it was her. But when a tree falls in the forest and there's no one around to hear it, like did it really happen? And you don't get that payoff. And this is what they're doing with a number of these character deaths. There's just no payoff for the audience that has invested 8 years in watching this show and reading the books
Yeah.
and like all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, while I guess the difference is like to point to a death that was sudden, that was unexpected, but affected everybody in a way that was a positive outcome of the show, is the Red Wedding. So
Yeah.
when the Frey, is it the Freys? I think it's the Freys. Walder Frey, yeah. So when the Freys betray the Starks and side with the Lannisters and kill Robb Stark and his pregnant wife, like, you are gutted. And it's sudden. It's not the death that he deserved. You don't see it coming, but it makes you so angry at the bad people in this world that it makes you just root even more for the good people that are left.
Right.
And what's happening with the death of these bad guys that you associate with the Walder Freys of the world, is that they're just, kind of being buried alive or thrown off a building or, burned by a dragon super fast, just like snuff, and you're done. And there's no payoff. Like, you felt terrible, even though Oberon was peacocking and was not necessarily a good person. You kind of liked him. He was charismatic. So when the mountain crushed his head, like, it was just shattering.
Yeah.
And you're not getting any of these deaths, like, they even kind of copycatted themselves a little bit in the Clegane Bowl, as the internet is calling it, with Sandor and Gregor fighting on the staircase. There's a point where Gregor tries to squish his eyeballs in again, does that move. And it kind of harkens back to that. And they don't do it. Like, even with the two of them, you don't get a satisfying end. They fall off a building into the fire. And it's like, well, I knew they were both going to die. I knew they weren't coming out of this. But it felt so lackluster to characters that have been around for the entire series.
I'm afraid to tell you, I don't think next episode's going to be any better for you.
No. I since last week, I have kind of resigned to the point where I no longer think that this is going to end well. And I don't mean that in who is on the throne or how they resolve the who's who, who's where, and who's dead, who's not. I don't like that. I've always known that can kind of go any way, right? I'm surprised Jon has lasted this long. I thought he was dead 3 seasons ago. Like, there's all these things where you've kind of resigned to not, guess or not have any real investment in any one person. It's fun to kind of keep guessing, but there's not one person that you've been rooting for this whole time that you think is going to make it, right? Because you know better. My concession is that they're not going to do it well in execution. It's going to be long. It's going to be poorly written. There is going to be the kind of stuff that, you described in terms of, like, Jon and Daenerys and Arya. And if that happens, great. But it's not going to happen in a way that's going to make any sense. Like, it's
no.
Not to mention, okay, sure. Somebody kills Daenerys. What happens to the dragon? How do you deal with Drogon if Daenerys is dead? I'm guessing.
Jon.
Well, Jon's magic touch, right? But we've never seen Jon interact with Drogon. It's always been Rhaegal, right?
Right.
And Drogon has been ridiculously protective of Daenerys. It's it's like two separate people with their dogs, right? Like, the dogs are going to be loyal to the owner, not necessarily the other owner, right? They're not going to be unfriendly, but the loyalty is in different places. And so I don't think they're going to be able to tie it up in any kind of...
No, and I have... My biggest thing is HBO has done this over and over and over and over again. This has been their biggest thing. And it just came out this week, official announcement from George R.R. Martin is there's 3 new shows coming in the next 2 to 3 years on HBO in the Game of Thrones universe. And if they don't nail this in one more episode, I don't think anybody tunes back in.
No,
I
zero.
think it's going to. People are so pissed if they don't nail this in the next episode. I think if it doesn't have a satisfying conclusion, I think they're going to drive viewers away because I think people are going to go, "Oh well, that was 8 years of my life I want back."
Yeah. Not to mention that I would go so far to say that they're going to hurt hurt his book sales when he does eventually finish the final book.
He had to come out this week because there was people saying that he's already written them and that what was it? He's already written these books and he has intentionally not released them because of HBO. And he had to come out and say something like that's not true. I haven't finished the books.
I from interviews with the showrunners, I know that they were working with an outline, and the details were not written, but Martin had an outline as to what the next events of the next books were going to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if you want to really see the two sides of the coin, episodes or seasons 1 through 6, written, based on material written by George R. R. Martin. Roughly about halfway through season 7, maybe even earlier, through to now, written by Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like they're predictable.
It's obvious.
The dialogue is terrible. The cleverness is not there. The subtleness is not there. They have to repeat things. We've got to see Arya almost die 6 times. We've got to see Daenerys burn the streets 12 times or more. Like it's just they've gone the way of. I mean, this is a terrible comparison, but like this last episode, the angrier I get, the more I compare it to a Michael Bay Transformers movie, where it's just kind of like there's an awful lot going on with no substance. While it was visually interesting and engaging, it told me nothing. And then when a character went and did something, I was like, wait, what? Because I had no context. Like there was nothing that you couldn't convince me of anything, going in there that it was at all satisfying. One thing I did find satisfying, even though I didn't like how he was captured, I did enjoy the scene between Tyrion and Jaime when they say goodbye.
Yes.
That felt like Game of Thrones. Like that felt like Tyrion, despite his dedication to Daenerys as still the best person for the job on the throne, he still wanted to save his sister and his brother. So he's like, I'm going to free you. You're going to sneak in. Davos is going to smuggle you in, and you're going to get Cersei, and you're going to get out of there. And the whole reason I'm doing it is to save you and Cersei, and to save 10,000 people who are innocent that could die in this battle. I've been in one.
Right.
That's where I got this scar. I had to do things I'm not proud of. So I'm not necessarily proud of this, but like we're family, and it just proves that he's got this loyalty split that they pointed out earlier in this episode, earlier in the season, and I felt it made sense. Now, what didn't make sense was the fact that they had captured Jaime in the first place. How did he get captured? Well, they saw my golden hand.
Well, not only that, but the thing that bothered me was so what? Why were they bothering to capture him? He fought at the wall and he wants to go back to King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares?
Exactly. No, but that's the thing. He needs to be in the tent with Tyrion. How do you get him there?
Yeah.
Write something in the script that gets him there. Weak sauce. Yeah. But that aside, that scene, had it happened in any other way, was still exactly what those two characters needed, right? You felt the goodbye. You even kind of felt like the actors saying goodbye, right? Like their last scene together, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very well done and very well acted by Peter Dinklage, and I can't remember the guy that plays Jaime, or I can never pronounce his name.
I can't ever pronounce his name.
Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
Yeah.
I mean, again, fantastic stuff, but just the situation was just ham-fisted into the episode where it could have been a lot different. Like, really, what should have happened is, like, you could have had that scene with Tyrion in Winterfell with Jaime, right? Not Brienne, right? Instead of Brienne, it's Tyrion that is trying to argue, don't go. and then finally realizing he's going to go. It's like, we're fine. If you're going to go, then you need to do this. Because I'm telling you right now, you've seen it. You've seen the dragons twice now. We are going to own Cersei's face. You need to get her out of there. Like there could have been much better times to do it.
Right.
And it just didn't seem to work out. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to mention. The Sandor in the mountain, it was what it was. I felt the mountain kind of had him hands down twice, 3 times easily, and then just didn't because he was like toying with him. It was the silent zombie version of monologuing in a supervillain, situation. He was just.
I was like, oh, we're in a Friday the 13th movie. He's Jason.
Yeah. So that was the thing. The only other thing that I guess should be worth mentioning is that Varys also had a death that was lackluster that we didn't get to see. It's.
I understood why they killed Varys. I wasn't mad about it, but I just felt like there was no dialogue. He's been helping Daenerys for a while, and the only thing she says is, "You're guilty." And I was like, really? That's all you have to say to him? And he gives that dialogue to Tyrion, and I'm like, no, that should be directed at Daenerys, not Tyrion.
Yeah, and I feel like rather than Tyrion ratting him out, he should have been caught, or he should have been caught red-handed, or snuck out, or something where.
But that it was easier to blame Tyrion.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess the whole idea is that it puts Tyrion on the outs with Daenerys, or it's his way back in. I don't know. It just didn't.
I'm telling you, next episode, Jon and Tyrion are gonna be ready to be spit roasted when Daenerys gets killed by Arya, and Jon's gonna end up on the throne at the end. That's how it's gonna end.
Yeah. There's some other theories about people thought that Sansa would end up on the throne. I mean, I don't see it happening anymore, but there were some points when I thought, like the play that she made with Tyrion, right? After the idiotic decision that Jon made to tell Arya and Sansa that he's got Targaryen, that he's Targaryen. I thought her move was interesting. And I thought, okay, so if she's telling Tyrion, knowing that Tyrion is going to do the right thing, and she can sense his loyalty kind of like wavering. They had that moment, that bonding moment in the crypts, I thought that was a smart move. But at the same time, as much as people love Sansa now, you don't see her leaving Winterfell, right? Like you don't see. No. It's not that she necessarily wants the throne, but she just doesn't want Daenerys on it, right? Because if Jon was on it, then she wouldn't have to bend the knee to Jon. Or if she did swear fealty to Jon, she would know from Jon that he's not going to make her do anything that she doesn't want to because he's from the north, right?
Right.
It would be no different than if Ned Stark had taken the throne, right? Like that's the kind of feeling that I get. Anyway, I don't know how it's going to end next week. There are only a handful of characters left, really. The main ones being Jon, Daenerys, Tyrion, Arya. I'm curious to see what happens to Davos. I hope nothing, because I like him a lot. And who else is left? I think that's really it. I can't think of anybody else's. Well, I guess Drogon would be the other giant question mark. But yeah, moral of the story is take your time when you're writing the final seasons to the most successful television show of all time.
I have a final question to ask you.
Okay.
Before we wrap up Game of Thrones here. Something I don't know if you saw the headlines today.
No.
So we've got 3 new Star Wars movies that are going to start coming out in 3 years.
Oh, yes, I did know this.
You know who the new showrunners are?
I do.
It is the Game of Thrones showrunners.
Yep.
How does that make you feel?
Not great.
Okay,
however,
so you and I are on the same boat.
However, I will also say that after The Last Jedi, we can only go up.
Yes.
There's not really, and
I don't know if I've been on the record on this show, but I hate that movie.
No, I think we've both mentioned it, or at least given that impression before. I think the one thing that might make me say okay, sure, to the showrunners from Game of Thrones doing a series of Star Wars films would be one, the Skywalker saga is coming to a close, which means they can't mess with canon, right?
Right.
So, like,
Well, okay.
assuming they can't mess with canon, right? So
the rumor is this new series that's coming isn't going to be in the Star Wars saga. They're going back to the Old Republic.
okay, so I mean, like 1,000 years
Like,
before anybody ever even
yeah,
existed. Sure, I mean that's Wild West type stuff. That's fine, because that's uncharted territory. That's just lore at this point, right? Like it's not
right.
part of there. It's not characters that you've invested 30 years in, right? It's
Mhm.
it's a different sort of thing. Um, it's similar to the news that, okay, this is a slight, well, it's a big Endgame spoiler. So if you haven't seen Endgame, then just cover your ears. But I saw an interview with Anthony Mackie, and I thought from the end of Endgame that he was going to be in the films as Captain America, taking the mantle, Falcon taking the mantle from Steve Rogers. But it's going to be a Disney Plus series. It's going to be TV.
Yeah.
I have never been less excited. I was so stoked for Anthony Mackie and having the Falcon be Captain America and what that meant for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And now I'm just like, oh God, a TV show? Really? All I can think of is like, well, he's not going to be flying around anywhere.
I have a funny feeling it's going to be a TV series, and then he's going to pop up in movies.
Oh, it is. It's going to be a TV series. That's confirmed. I've heard it from.
Oh yeah, I know,
but
mouth. I'm just saying. Then he's going to pop into to movies.
Yes, but popping in is not leading or starring in, right? Like it's
no.
Anyway, yeah, I was disappointed to say the least.
I mean, come on. Again, you warn people, Endgame spoilers, but I want to know how we're getting a Black Widow movie.
Well, Budapest.
Well, if that's the case, I now don't care about Budapest.
Yeah, no, I agree.
If they had done this 5 years ago and given us Budapest, I'd have been excited.
Yeah.
Now I just don't give a shit.
Yeah. No. Have you seen the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer?
Yes. Okay. I've seen all of them.
So there's an introduction of the multiverse. Now, whether or not it's Mysterio bullshitting or not, and I think Mysterio's full of shit. But the fact that Nick Fury confirms the multiverse type stuff makes me think maybe that's how we get some extra content.
I think that's where we're going. I think the next 10 years is going to be the MCU dealing with the multiverse. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of this arc, it's going to be the collision of the multiverse. Like they did in the comics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree.
And then when we're done, we're going to have about 50 new superheroes and a bunch of universes collided and having to deal with the aftermath.
Yeah. Yeah. All of that in a upcoming Endgame special that I've been trying to cook up. Johnny Castro Arden from Spawn Chunks, my friend Pixel Riffs, he wants to come on and talk about it. I know a number of people here that are regulars on the Citadel Cafe want to talk about Endgame. I have put it off on purpose just because I wanted to make sure that there was a few weeks between when it was out and when we had a chance to talk about it. So that's coming out soon. I need to arrange kind of like a multi-head podcast about it. So I want to steer us back to wrap up Game of Thrones before we go on an Endgame tangent that'll last an hour and a half, because I have got thoughts. So for the last episode, we're anticipating Daenerys on the throne and Arya being unhappy about it, and Jon being fireproof and probably, I guess, taking over the control of Drogon. Where do we see audience reaction? Can we speculate?
I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed with the way it ends.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed, and I think a lot of people have already checked out. So the one saving grace that they might have is that because of the last two episodes, because of the season at large, and the decisions the characters have been making, I think that people just don't care anymore. And if they go into that last episode with that attitude, then it gives HBO at least a little bit of grip to be like, well, if we at least end it in an okay way, people are going to be quote unquote satisfied because they've already given up. I don't think that
Yeah.
that's their plan. That's not, they didn't go in there knowing it. They went in there thinking they were doing good stuff, and they weren't. But I I think that's going to be the only thing that saves the last season of this show from complete slam from fans. I really feel like it's going to hurt Martin book sales. Like he is going to have to come out and say the book is done and it does not end like the show in order to get people, because most of the people that watch the show haven't read the books. I mean, there's a lot of people have, but most, because of how many people watch the show, most probably haven't read the books. And those people, having watched the end of this season, when that book comes out, don't care. They just don't care. Even the people that have read the books, if the book comes out and there's not a clear communication that it is not the way that HBO handled it, then, even if, because I mean, he's not going to give away the ending, but he has to come out and say that it's different to get anybody interested, because no one is going to care. And so my prediction for next week for audience reception is, I think it's going to be even lower. This episode, The Bells, is already the worst reviewed episode of Game of Thrones to date. It is both the most watched and the most disliked.
Yep.
Which should say something about the content. But that's it. That's going to be the end of the Game of Thrones talk for this week. Before we completely leave your ear holes, though, I'm going to tell you about Patreon, and that is where you can go to support this lovely podcast, and that is over at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. We are a listener-supported show. If you decide to support the show in any way that you see fit, then you get access to the Discord chat. That is where we hang out and talk about all kinds of cool stuff like Minecraft and Lego and Game of Thrones. It is a much happier place than this series covering Game of Thrones. I assure you, it is a much happier place. So that is patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. I hope to see you there. I really appreciate it, the support and the help in making this podcast. Now, normally this is where we do a little internet minute pick, but I thought we would end on a high note and just have something positive to leave the episode on. And Lou, you've brought it. So what's up?
Yeah. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. I saw Detective Pikachu this weekend at a drive-in theater of all things. And it was a doubleheader. It was Detective Pikachu followed by Shazam, one after another.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I got to tell you, Detective Pikachu, if you are over the age of 45 and don't really know what Pokemon are, you're not going to like it. You're not going to get it. You're not going to, it's just going to blow right by you.
Just not the intended audience.
Not the intended audience. If you know what Pokemon are, that's awesome. The movie never explains to you what Pokemon are. It's amazing. It begins with a clip of a kid trying to become a Pokemon trainer and giving up. And then there's like a 3-second line where they're explaining the city that everything takes place in is different from the typical Pokemon city. And they explain why it's different. They never tell you anything except that Pokemon have always been here. That's it. That's the only detail you get.
It's a movie about talking fictitious animals. Like it shouldn't need much more explanation, right?
Right. Well, no, Pokemon don't talk. Pokemon just say their names.
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah. I got that from the trailer. I thought that was a really smart part about the trailer.
And the thing is that from that point on, everything goes out the window. The plot, I had a couple of theories who our villain was. It's because it's kind of a murder mystery type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't surprised by who the villain was, but there was like 3 ways it could have gone, and I didn't know which one of the 3 ways they were going to go.
Right. So not wholly predictable. Like it had some.
It's a kids film noir movie set in the Pokemon universe. That's it.
Nice. Yeah. No,
And
it looks fun. I've seen some great interviews. The marketing that they're doing is fantastic.
and Ryan Reynolds totally makes Deadpool jokes that have been toned down for children, so that the kids will go, "Wait, what did he say?" And then he rolls right into a kid's joke, so that they're not even going to focus on the adult joke he just told.
Right.
Because he even make he there is literally a line where he makes a joke about snorting lines of coke, and they roll right into a kid's joke afterwards, and you go, "Wait, did he just say what I think he said?"
Yeah, the fast talking Reynolds delivery where you throws little things and you're like, wait, what?
Like
Yeah.
I literally thought to myself, I don't know if Nintendo realizes the joke he just made.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that happening for sure. Well, that's good. I'm glad that it's something that's enjoyable because
It's very enjoyable. Like I was expecting it to maybe be too dumbed down for kids. And it is. It's a kids movie. Like,
mhm,
don't go into it expecting like Game of Thrones writing
mm,
of like the previous seasons
right.
or anything like that. But if you go into it expecting something lighthearted, kind of goofy, directed at kids with some fun, and it's not dumbed down for you in any way, shape, or form, from what I gathered, uh, there was tons of Pokemon going around, and I've played my fair share of Pokemon games. So, but even some of the things walking around, they never explain to you what every Pokemon that's on screen does or is. You just see them. And then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, did you see that thing over there?" And you'll be like, "What? Wait, what?" Or something just uses its power and you go, "Oh, okay." Like they never tell you stuff.
Well, because they're basically, I mean, the audience that they're writing this for already knows what all this stuff is, and they're just looking to
Yep.
see their favorite Pokemon characters not as pixel art, and as actual CG characters doing cool stuff in real live action situations. And
Yeah.
the in jokes, like where the adult jokes and the little like snorting lines of cocaine are going to get the adults, the little cameo from some rare Pokemon in the corner is what's going to get the kids to go, "Oh my God, did you see that thing that happened?" And that's
Yeah.
that's just clever writing. Like that's just kind of having something for everybody. Well, it's
Yeah.
good. I'm glad. I hope that it does well
It did
because
really well. It rivaled Endgame last week.
nice,
They almost made the same amount of money last week.
right? I mean, Endgame has been out for like 3 weeks now, but
Oh yeah, but still, this was being sent out, and nobody knew how well it was going to do in theaters, and it made like 60 million last week
nice,
domestically.
very cool.
So I mean, it's going to make its money. I have a funny feeling we might get a sequel.
Cool. Because I'd rather see movies like that about video games that have a sense of humor and don't take themselves too seriously do well.
It's being called the first video game movie to be successfully done.
Yeah. Well, because
So
it's so out there, right? Like it's Detective Pikachu. Like that's Detective Pikachu is not a thing in the games, right? Like they're completely.
there is a game called Detective
Oh, is
Pikachu,
there? Okay.
and it came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and it sold really well in Japan, and it sold okay here in the United States. But it's kind of like a kid's choose your own adventure story, and apparently it borrows some of the plot and setup from the game, but the story is not the game's story at all,
Hmm.
from what I understand. Guys, I've never played it.
Okay. Cool. Well, I will keep it on my list. I doubt I'm going to go see it in theater, but it will be on my.
I would tell you right now, don't if Pokemon's not your thing, not seeing it in theaters is fine, but definitely it's something that give it like 20 minutes when it comes to home video or shows up on your Netflix queue. Give it like 20 minutes, and if by the end of the first 20 minutes you're not kind of like interested, it first 5 minutes are a little slow, but
Hmm.
about 15 the first 15 to 20 minutes it starts to pick up.
Well, I've watched some pretty mediocre rom-coms with Ryan Reynolds in them, and I like them because I like Ryan Reynolds. They get a pass because he's in it, and I find him entertaining and charming. But
Yeah.
but the movie itself is like, well, that was predictable and cookie cutter rom-com, but whatever. Like it filled an hour and a half. So yeah, I'll put that in that kind of camp, and that I'll probably watch it just to kind of see what Ryan Reynolds says. And I like
CG
animation and CG, and
I would actually
yeah,
be curious as to your take on the animation because I thought they did it fabulously.
yeah,
There's only 2 or 3 scenes that are them in front of like a window that I felt you could tell they were behind a blue screen
right,
or
yeah,
green screen. But other than that, it felt like you were totally inside on a set in a movie.
mm,
And then all of a sudden, there's a couple of scenes where they filmed it in front of what's supposed to be a window looking out on the world, and you could totally see that they filmed it in front of a green screen. But I'm like, it happens.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap things up there. If you'd like to know more about what we've talked about here on this episode of The Citadel Cafe, you can find the show notes at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show is composed by Kevin MacLeod. Email the show and let us know what you think of the last season of Game of Thrones at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com. Find us by name on Twitter and Facebook or your favorite podcast app. That includes Android, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. We are pretty much everywhere that you can grab a podcast. And, of course, word of mouth is the best way to share the show around. So if you've enjoyed this, if you are as frustrated about Game of Thrones as I am, then tell friends. We can be frustrated together. My name is Joel Duggan, and you can find everything that I'm doing online at joelduggan.com. And I am going to point you towards Twitch. It's twitch.tv/JoelDuggan. We have updated the Citadel server to 1.14 for Minecraft, and I'm going to be back doing some streaming. I'm going to be back doing some art streaming as well. I had a very busy April, but I'm getting back into the swing of things in May. So check out Twitch for my online content. Everything else is just my name. I'm really, really easy to find. Lou, where can people find you online?
The easiest place to find me is anywhere on social media under the name Busy Zombie Lord. And you guys will check out my podcast, Zombies Ate My Podcast, where this week we discussed the first episode of Netflix's new zombie show, Black Summer. And Ryan gives us a rundown of the new zombie game by Sony that I can't think of its name at the moment. Days Gone.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.